Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of Collecting Japanese Prints. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. So I want to welcome all of you. Welcome all of you who are seeing us on YouTube. I do these presentations live on Facebook, and then I upload them onto YouTube to archive them so that everyone can go back and watch past episodes. So today's Woodblock Wednesday is inspired by a couple things. One, I've gotten some really fantastic new prints recently, and I'm preparing for an exhibition coming up in the next few weeks. I think the exhibition should go up by the end of this month or early next, so just keep an eye out for that. But the other reason I'm doing this is because the market right now is really strong, but it's also encouraging crazy sort of pricing on a lot of things that clients have, checked in with me and asked me what I thought about. And so, this video is sort of inspired by their questions or concerns. And, so I'd like to talk about Kawase Hasui today. He's a Shinhanga artist, and his prices have gotten really strong lately based on some auctions that have occurred recently, the last couple of years. But also the market for all 20th century Shinhanga prints have pretty much gone up quite a bit. And he is one of the most popular print artists working in Japan for the early to mid part of the 20th century. He exclusively, I don't want to use the word exclusively, but he primarily focused on landscapes. There are a couple portraits that he did, but by and large, he was known as a woodblock print artist that focused on landscapes, beautiful Japanese landscapes. And so they're easy to understand by and large, and a lot of that, which encourages a lot of collectors from all walks of life. And so there's a lot of new collectors and a lot of new interest in Japanese prints. And that's certainly reflected in the prices that are being fetched at auction. But collectors really need to be careful. And so this video is an attempt to sort of address some concerns for all of us, all the collectors out there, to make sure that they're doing the right things and avoiding mistakes that we've all made and we've all learned from. And so hopefully this video will help you avoid some mistakes that would cost you, particularly money, down the road. So without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So I'm going to walk back so that you could see the table. I have some flowers in the background there. But I have two really fantastic Kawase Hasui prints. Not one, but two. And so we'll focus on this one first. And, let me just talk to you about Hassui for a second. So Hassui was born in 1883 and passed away in 1957. He was one of Shozaburo Watanabe's top landscape artist. He worked with Watanabe for his entire career. He did produce some designs for a couple of other publishers, but by and large, I'd say about 95% of his output was published by Watanabe. And these two prints are really great because they're formatted slightly different. They're longer and they're more narrow. And so they're basically, they're not oban. They're larger than oban in the sense that they're longer, but they're not as wide as an oban print. Just slightly more narrow. And so these are sort of Tanzaku style prints or pillars style prints that Hasui designed, and they're inspired by the format in Japanese scrolls, which are longer and more narrow. And both designs lend themselves to really successful, longer, very vertical, designs. And so, I think Hasui certainly exploited the motif within this context of the sizing quite well. And so what I wanted to point out is, first of all, how beautiful these prints are. This design, it represents Honmon Temple. It was done in 1928. And this design is of Kagan Falls, and that's located in Nikko. And this was done in 1931. And, I want to point out, we have two wonderful examples, and I want to point out, as collectors, what you should be looking for. First of all, you want to look at the tone of the paper. You want to make sure that the paper is not brown or soiled or stained. There's no sort of spots that would indicate foxing, which is mold, or any disturbances in the paper. And here is a beautiful shot of the back. It's quite beautiful. The design, the bleed through has come through quite well, which obviously suggests there is no backing to this sheet of paper. And sometimes prints receive a backing because the paper is brittle or weak, and so there's been, the paper has been compromised, and so a paper conservator or someone adds a backing to protect the print from cracking. And also backings are placed on prints because there might be holes in them or other abrasions to the surface of the paper, either whether it's on the back or on the front. And so backing is certainly something that you should stay away from in 20th century Hanga prints. And so again, if you look at the paper, it's nice and clean. It is not white. This folder is white. The tone of this paper is actually a cream. I wouldn't even call that off-white. It's a cream color. And so you could tell that the paper is not brand new. It has some age to it, but at the same time, it's actually very, very clean, and you don't see any issues to the paper. We have another wonderful example here to compare the sheet tone. You could see they both look exactly the same because both of these prints were treated very well, never framed, and they were basically housed in archival folders. And so the prints have never been exposed to light. The colors are very sharp and vivid, and certainly the paper is stable and exactly what you would expect. Now, I had a client contact me recently because he saw Hasui being offered somewhere online, he wasn't quite sure what to think of it. And he sent me a picture, and the print, they were asking, almost 20,000 for the print. It wasn't a very important design, but most of all, the paper was brown and it was dirty, and it should not look like that. And so they were asking a very, very strong price for a design that, if it was perfect, probably would not be worth that much. But on top of that, the paper condition of the print was just not there. There was a lot of problems with it. And so, as a dealer, I would have valued that print at maybe 3,000 to 5,000, not near 20 that they were asking. So you really want to be careful as collectors and people who are interested in buying these prints, because you want to make sure the condition is as perfect as you can. Now, of course, there's no such thing as something that's perfect, especially when it's printed on paper. And, paper is very fragile. There could be little nicks. They could be little abrasions. And of course, these are printed by hand, and the print making process certainly can cause minor issues in the paper. But that's original, and you have to understand that. But what you don't want to see is tape on the back of prints. You don't want to see the margins being dark or either yellow, brown, or gray. Those are no-nos. You definitely want to stay away from those. And I would stay away from them not just because they're aesthetically they're not pleasing. Also, that suggests that there's acidity in the paper, and that acidity over time will damage the integrity of the paper, and then that paper will degrade over time. And so you don't want to spend thousands of dollars on a print, and then a few years later, or 10 or 20 years later, you decide to sell the print, and the print is starting to break. or you can't sell it because it's been in terrible condition and no one will want to buy it at that point. So I've said a lot about the condition, but it's really important. So if you're interested in buying Shinhanga prints by Hasui, particularly his fantastic early designs, yes, expect to spend quite a bit of money, but you want to spend that money on quality. And so always work with a reputable dealer. All of the dealers in the Ukiyo-e Dealers Association, including myself, we've all been vetted. We're all been in business for quite a bit of time. We all are very knowledgeable. We're experts in the field. So I wouldn't have any qualms with dealing with any of us from the Ukiyo-e Dealers Association. Now, there's other print organizations that are set up. There's one in New York. They're great too. So any of these associations that have reputable dealers that have been in the business for years, you're fine. But it's these other dealers that pop up every so often and then disappear, and they're offering things for crazy prices. And it might be tempting if the design is something you've always been looking for, but stay away if the condition is not there. You're spending real money. You should demand the best. So, having said all that, let's look at these prints. Like I said, this is a design of a temple, Honmon temple. And you know how beautiful the printing is? You could kind of see that the light is just trailing in at an angle. You could see the background. There's pink and lavender in the clouds. The light is hitting the pagoda in such a way. It's darker here, and you can see the light hitting the top of the pagoda. Now, this could either be at dawn or at dusk. I read it as dusk. And so I could see the bottom part darkening very quickly as the light is dissipating, and it's just a little bit of light left that's reflected or held in the roof of the pagoda. So let me zoom in so you could see how beautifully printed this design is. Now, I also want to point out, this is a Watanabe A-type seal. This print was done in 1928, so this print is the first state. This seal is the appropriate seal for this period of time for a first state or first... no one wants to call this an edition because it wasn't actually numbered. An edition refers to number, but this is the earliest printing that you could hope for in this design. And you could see that because it's so early, the printing is so subtle. You could see sort of the colors on how well they were applied, how the darker colors sort of hug the design on the outer part of it, and then the lighter colors are more focused at the center. And that takes great skill in the printmaking to apply the colors in such a way. You could see in the background the bokashi color gradation from dark to light, and in the sky there. It's an exquisite print, and this impression has a lot of texture in terms of how it's printed. I mean, I just love it. You can almost feel a sense of, the atmosphere at the bottom. You can almost, it might be, I'm kind of getting a sense that it's cooler down here. Almost even a sense of, if you've ever been in these parks or at the temple complexes, you could almost feel fog rolling in as the sun sets. So I really get an atmospheric quality in how the design has been rendered. It's really great. Now we'll move on to the next print. And this is a design of Kagan Falls, as I said. And this is a waterfall that Hassui depicted a few times in his career. So there's a few known. But in this case, this is the only one where he actually made it into this pillar style tanzaku, or narrow style print. So again, it's oversized in the sense it's longer, but slightly thinner than a regular Oban print. And but the format, because it's echoes that scroll aesthetic that we see in Japanese art. Both of these designs really work quite well based on the verticality of the format. And so, like the other print, this one is full of this wonderful printing effects. You could see the circular Beren marks that are artifacts from the rubbing of the print against the printing block, and these circular sort of lines were applied and left intentionally. It really gives a sense of texture and atmosphere, and also it highlights how the print is made, certainly by hand. Just love the texture up here in the rocks. Beautiful autumn scene. And again here with the really darker area, the dark blue in the interior of this, in where the top of the waterfall, it's darker there, and the light can't really reach it as well, and so the reddish orange in the trees is certainly highlighted, but in the interior here the colors are much darker, and so you have this bokashi, the darker blue, graduating to a lighter blue and then to a really light blue that's reflecting the water. I mean the light in the water. And now this design was done a little bit different, or not different, just a little bit later, a few years later. And so this is the third seal that Watanabe used. And this was done in 1931. And this is the appropriate seal for 1931 for the print being in early first state. So again, if you're paying top dollar on these Shinhanga designs, you want to make sure that the seals are the earliest version. Otherwise, it's a bargaining tactic. You could always talk to the dealer or whoever's offering to print to come down a bit on the price because the seals aren't the first state. I've done that personally myself. And so, that is certainly something you could think about. But between us, I'll say that there really isn't a difference between, like, let's say, for example, this was not an A-type seal, but it was this seal. It's going to look about the same. Now, maybe the printing effects wouldn't be as saturated. For some collectors, that's one of the most important aspects of a Hasui print. So I could see them holding out and wanting the very first seal. But if your eye isn't that picky about these things, then you could save a little bit by getting prints with a later seal. The problem is this: what's available is available, and if it's a print you love, you may never see it in the next few years. Heck, these two prints are actually quite rare. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and these are the first time I've handled these two designs, and I've seen this one for sale maybe 5 or 6 times in 20 years, and this one I've only seen 2 or 3 times for sales. They're very rare. Now, they're not pre-earthquake, but they're rare, which tells me that Watanabe didn't print that many impressions of these prints. And partly, I think, might be the format. Maybe the format wasn't as popular with his clientele in the West. I'm not sure. But what I can tell you is that they're more rare in many cases than some pre-earthquake designs that I see more often. So, it's just one of those things. So I'm going to zoom in on both prints so you can enjoy the design and how they're printed. bit more that you could see that texture, which is great. Now, I want to also point out, because every time we discuss something here on Woodblock Wednesday, I always like to show the reference book that may be associated with the particular item. And today we're talking about Hasui, and this book is part of the two-volume set. Here is the slipcase, and here's the other book. It's a two-volume set. The author, Kendall Brown, penned a fantastic catalog raisonné, or the book that highlights Hasui's complete body of work. And I hesitate to say complete because there have been some prints that have been discovered, and I use the word discovered air quotes, that were not included in the book. And I hear from Ken that he is updating the Hasui book, and so there will be another one coming out fairly soon. So for those of you who are interested in getting something that's more updated, this book is almost 20 years old. This came out like in the early 2000s. So yeah, it might be 20 years old in the next year or two. So it definitely needed a little bit of updating, and I hear that's in the works, which is great. But nonetheless, this book, if you could find it, is a great reference, and it highlights all of Hasui's, well, nearly all of them, all of the designs in full color. So here we have an example of the print that we're discussing, and then I bookmarked the other page where the other print is highlighted. So you could see they're all in color. Now, sometimes you'll see how they differ. So you could see, if you look at it, sorry, there's some glare. You don't see the stronger aspects of the blue color coming in, and on the print, that's certainly there. So that could be a difference in this impression. It could also be a difference in how the print was put in the book, and how the colors were rendered in the book. Sometimes you lose things in the translation from real life to the book, but from what I could see, it's not as darkly printed in certain areas, which just suggests that these are prints produced by hand, and there's going to be a variation from impression to impression. So it's always nice to have a book, because you could compare different impressions and kind of get a sense of either how consistent the printing was or how different the printing was. And in this case, these two vary quite a bit. So I have to sit down and really compare the design in the book versus the one that I have here. And again, as I said, both of these prints I just acquired them, and they're going to go up on my site, collectingjapaneseprints.com. They'll be going up in the next update, a general update of masterpieces. I'm basically updating my last exhibition, and I'll be doing a new exhibition on Tanaka Roihei. He's an etcher. That will be a solo exhibition of his work. That's also going to go up in a few weeks. And when I say few, I mean 2 or 3. And I plan to do another exhibition on Hassui postcard size prints. So there's 3 important exhibitions that will go up on my site in the matter of 2 to 3 weeks. Please have a look. If you want me to keep you posted, sign up for an email. I don't spam. I don't sell any of the information I receive. All you will receive are my emails. And I only email about once a month or once every other month or so. So you're not going to be inundated with emails from me. So feel free to sign up, and you can go to my website and sign up to join the email list. So one last time, so you can enjoy these fantastic prints. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me on this installment of Woodblock Wednesday. I hope you enjoyed the two Hasui prints I was very fortunate to just acquire to share with all of you. They'll be going up on my website again on collectingjapaneseprints.com. And a lot of wonderful things are planned, so please stay tuned. And of course, you could find me next week at this time for the next installment of Woodblock Wednesday. Until then, thank you again for joining me. See you soon.